Sound speeds. And if you work in theater, broadcasting, reality TV, or any other industry where you have someone that's in front of people, like for example, on-screen talent, and they need to have a low-profile hearing solution so they can maybe hear someone back in a control room, then you need something that is low profile. Well, obviously headphones don't work because they stand out like crazy. Inner ear monitors, those are kind of big and clunky. And not only that, they usually plug up the ear canal enough so that way you can't hear someone that maybe is asking a question. So that's not really a good option either. So at that point, you might as well just put your headphones back on, right? Well, you want your on-screen talent to look like they have the answers to everything magically without knowing where it comes from. And wireless isn't always an option because you could obviously have wireless issues and you want to have something hardwired. So what can you possibly do? I mean, the ear canal is a very small place and anything that goes in there is going to stick out, right? Well, kind of. Let me introduce you to the Bubblebee Sidekick. This is an inner ear monitor with micro drivers. And if you don't believe me that it's practically invisible and you can't really see it unless you're really, really looking hard for it, I'm wearing them now. What do you think of this? Before we get going, full disclosure, Bubblebee did send me a couple of sidekicks and a whole bunch of accessories to show you in this video. And despite the fact that they gave them to me for free and I get to keep them after this review, I'm not going to allow it to affect my opinion. So you can expect this to be a fair and honest review. The Sidekick is the world's first and only at the time of this video, microdriver IEM hearing solution where the drivers are so small they fit inside of your ear canal, leaving only the little bitty clear cable coming out in front. And at most angles, you can't even see it. And not only that, it's extremely lightweight. How lightweight? 360 milligrams. There are three basic versions of the Sidekick available. This one is stereo, indicated by the red right and blue left lettering on the drivers, not to mention the fact that there's two of them, right? And if you have a mono version, you have to specify left or right ear because red right, this one is a right ear version. And by default, it comes with a coiled cable for strain relief, but there is available a straight cable if you would like to switch it out for that. This is an accessory. The storage case that each Sidekick comes in is made of hard plastic, and it does give a little bit if you press it at the right angles. But for the most part, it's not really going to break or anything. It springs back pretty nicely. And there's a couple of little rubber pieces on the bottom that will stop it from sliding if you put it down on a hard table. When you open up the lid of the Sidekick carrying case, you'll notice that both the bottom and the top are lined with soft rubber, and the top has a little bubble in it. Behind that bubble is where you can store extra filters and ear tips for that particular IEM. Speaking of ear tips, there are three models that you can use with the Sidekick. There's the satellite dish, which is a full ambience model. That means that you can hear directly through it without any reduction of the background noise. But I will point out that the bass is quite reduced on this particular model. The second ear tip is the cowbell, and yes, it does have little slits in it. This is a medium ambience model, meaning that it reduces the background noise a few decibels by gently plugging up the ear canal just a little bit, and doing so brings the bass up out of nowhere. The third ear tip is the Christmas tree, and this is for a loud environment. It reduces the background noise in that environment quite a bit, and at that point you have a full bass response, but it's a little bit more difficult to hear through it. One of the things I'll usually do when I first test out a piece of audio gear is I will record my reaction on camera, and I do that for two reasons. Number one, so that I can see my reaction to my initial test of that piece of gear, and the other is so that I can kind of talk myself through what I hear for reference later. Now, I did say that I don't show this footage inside the review, but I'm going to make an exception in this case because I thought my reaction was kind of funny. When I first put the Sidekick inside my ear canal, I was using the satellite so I could hear around it, and that's the bass-reduced version. And when I first put them in, I wasn't that impressed with the way they sounded, to be completely honest. Sure, I could hear the mids and highs quite well, very detailed in fact, but the lows, there was almost no bass, and I was listening to my theme song, which is quite bassy. At the time, I could feel them in my ears because I was actively testing them, and I should be paying attention to them, right? But I have no doubt that if I were actively working and not really paying attention to them, I would forget that they were in there. Okay, I'm talking outside just to hear how this sounds, and I'm playing music, and if I dial in on the exact volume, it does seem to be working. So that's a win, I guess. There's no bass, there's no low end here as I'm playing one of my videos, just listening to my theme song over and over again. No bass, I can hear the outside world though. We're still watching my testing footage because there's another funny part coming up, and that was when I put the Christmas tree ear tips on the Sidekick and then put those in my ears. At this point, I wasn't paying any attention to the volume level on my phone, and when I hit play, I just about jumped out of my skin. That was loud. The bass literally came out of nowhere, and I was not expecting it. It was almost non-existent on the satellite dish, but on the Christmas tree, it's very present, and it sounded quite good. Have to hear it on a voice. Ah, so much better. Listening to my own podcast. So much of a difference. That's awesome. Here's the best technique I have found for putting a Sidekick inside your ear. Note the cable comes out of one side of the driver on the back of the Sidekick. Now, with my middle finger and thumb, I'm going to grab the top and bottom of that driver below the rubber ear tip. And then I put my pointer finger right here in the middle of that loop. Now I'm going to trace up from the bottom of my ear up and over the top. And when I get to the top of my ear, I'm going to slide my finger directly back until it hits the bottom of my ear. That's going to position the cable exactly where I want it to be. And then with my middle finger and thumb, I press it into my ear wherever I want it to go, however deep I want it to go. And notice I can put my finger all the way in my ear. That thing has vanished way up in there. And from here, it's naturally in and ready to go. As for the specifications, the frequency response is relatively flat through the fundamental vocal frequencies, but it does drop about 4 to 5 dB down to about 1.5K, and then it increases again to boost about 4 dB just under 3K before dropping off quickly above that. The sensitivity chart shows this a little bit differently, and at a volume level of 95 dB or a nominal level, the lows and highs are boosted a little bit, so that while I look at it as what happens in relation to the fundamental vocal frequencies, the way Bubblebee calculates it spec-wise is more standard. Note that at lower or higher volume levels, the amount of decibel increases and decreases fluctuate just a bit. Also note that the Sidekick is a higher impedance audio device, at least higher than I was expecting it to be, so it might not work well with lower-end listening devices or those without proper amplification. One thing I do find important to mention is that both on the stereo and the mono version of the Sidekick, there is a TRS 3.5mm or 1/8 inch connector on them. The reason this is important is because if you're listening on the stereo version, left and right is indeed stereo. It's not summed into mono. But on the mono version, it's also a stereo connector. Therefore, if you plug it into something, it's going to sum it together, obviously, into one ear. As for cable management with the Sidekick, there are 3 options to choose from. The first comes with the Sidekick, and it's called the Hippo clamp. And it simply goes on something, and then you clamp it in place. Now, as I mentioned, it does come with it, and if you're trying to figure out how to get it off of there, very simple. You pull the cable out a little bit, you bring it around the hippo's mouth, and you pull it straight through. The second clip available is called the hornbill clip, and you simply clip the cable directly into that. And the third is this small rubber piece that slides down the cable to help ensure a proper fit. If your Sidekick starts to sound a little bit muffled, especially in the mids or highs, or requires more volume for you to hear anything at all, then you probably have a gunked up driver. And to fix that, it's very simple. You remove the tip and then look for that little bitty white thing inside of the driver itself. And to fix it, all you do is reach for one of these little black pieces of plastic, which is a filter replacement tool. There's a white side and a black side, and if you stick the black side inside the tip of the driver and then gently remove, you'll pull with it a little bitty white filter. That keeps all the gunk from getting into the driver. Spin around the little tool and you guessed it, the white part is a little filter to press back into the driver. On the note of gunk, I would highly recommend that for sanitary reasons, you wipe down the Sidekick after every single use. And not just that, if you're planning on giving the Sidekick to someone else to wear, then at the very least, change out the ear tips and the filters on each driver before you give it to a new person. I mean, you don't want to give talent something all gunked up and grimy, do you? I also want to point out that these are not designed for studio or production audio people. I mean, you could wear them, but they're not designed for you. They're designed for on-camera talent. It's for them, not for you. Another thing I'll point out is that if you take a hot shower and then you stick the Sidekick in your ear with the satellite dish tips installed, when you remove it, you will find a bunch of earwax stuck to that. It will find earwax you never knew you had. Don't ask me how I know. I read it somewhere. The Sidekick is designed to be an IEM that fits entirely in your ear while allowing you to hear the outside world around you. And for that reason, it's recommended that you start at the lowest volume and then bring it up. Don't start at a high volume and bring it down because you could hurt your ears. Remember, they're inside your ear canal and closer to your eardrum. Also note that if you were in a louder environment, that's when you would want to switch out to the cowbell or the Christmas tree. If you start off with the satellite tip in a regular type of ambience environment, you're probably going to be just fine. The Sidekick is available in both clear and brown and carries with it a 2-year factory warranty directly from Bubblebee. And if you buy one, you'll get it in 3 to 4 days via ground shipping absolutely free, which is standard for Bubblebee if you place an order over $150. We sound people know how to take care of our own gear, but anytime we send something out into the real world, be it the camera department or producers, we can expect it to get destroyed. So I feel the need to stress test this, especially because it's going on-screen talent. Just like your lavs get the heads ripped off and the connectors ripped off, I kind of want to test this the same exact way. Even though it's $350 for the stereo version or $230 for the mono version, I feel a very strong need to do so in this video so you know what you're buying. Now, I do want to point out the right angle connector does indeed have a bit of stress relief and strain relief on it, as does the end right before you go into the tip where it goes into your ear. That looks to be stress reinforced too. So I'm going to go ahead and pull on this quite a bit because after all, it does say it's Kevlar reinforced. So it should be pretty durable, right? We're about to test it. Here we go. Geez, I'm yanking on it. Okay, that surprised me. I actually expected to... Okay, I felt something... Oh, that was probably my hand. Okay, I thought I felt something stretch, but here we go. Doing something on the connector you're not supposed to do. I'm not a weak guy either. I'm actually pulling on it. Okay, here we go. And we're going to try this. Okay, let's rank this around my finger. Okay, I finally managed to break something. Oh, but it looks like it actually is supposed to break away. Is it? Wait a minute. Seriously? That's supposed to happen? Okay. Well, okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. I was managed to actually break something. Okay. That stress point right there did give. But I tell you, it took a lot of work. I think that I was actually pretty determined by the end there to do something. Now I kind of wish I hadn't broken it because I would have loved to have heard if it actually worked before I hit that a little bit too hard there. So what I am going to do is plug it up into my phone and give it a listen and see if it's still working on that one side, because I did put a lot of torque on the cable over there. So let me put this in my ear, and I know I'm not doing it the way I suggested doing it, but I want to test this out. So it's working. Now, that's not going to work because I yanked it out the driver. But I'm hearing it in my ears. I mean, let me see if this can... I don't know if it can be heard. I'll try turning it up. Can you hear that? I mean, if you can, I can. This is working. And so if you do want to break it and intentionally punish and whatever the little tiny part around the ear that you probably should never have done, you can break it, but it's not easy. I will tell you right now, it is not easy. And it's only because I was determined to break it did I actually do so. So what do I think of the Sidekick? I think it's extremely well thought out. I love all the different tips. I love the fact that you can change out filters. I love the fact that it's extremely durable. I mean, this cable is by no means pretty anymore. And like I said, I feel bad for that. But it did hold up flawlessly until I got overly determined to just destroy something and finally got successful. I wish it was a little bit more lower impedance, but then most of the devices that we plug it into shouldn't have any issues altogether because the amplifiers in them are just fine. And that's, of course, me speaking about people that work in the film industry. The Sidekick IEMs really do sound great, and I cannot emphasize that enough. They're extremely low profile, probably the lowest profile thing you could get without some sort of inner ear transmitter like a phonak system. But then it doesn't have the fidelity. Trust me on that one. Now, I do love the fact that it has various different tips. I love the fact that it has a design and a filter to actually catch all the gunk that would normally get into your ear to keep it out of the driver. I love the fact that it's reinforced and ruggedized in many, many different places. I don't know if this one would be actually covered by the 2-year warranty. I mean, this thing is pretty mangled up after I intentionally destroyed it. And like I said, I don't think it'd be covered under the warranty because I'm sure Bubblebee would be watching this video. Sorry. Now, the Sidekick is by no means a perfect device. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't find anything I would consider to be a flaw with the design when I was testing it. But I would say that I would love to see an actual spec for the attenuation that each tip gives you on your ears. Like, for example, what do you actually hear in the outside world? How much does it attenuate and of what frequencies, for example? Another thing I'll point out is that because the little driver is so tiny, I would imagine that because it sits inside your ear canal, if you get any kind of moisture buildup in there, like for example, if it's very, very hot outside or humid, or maybe both, like here in the South, then it would probably get a little drop of sweat inside of it fairly quickly and easily, rendering it completely useless. But then I would imagine that if you take it out, shake it out, it would probably be okay. You could probably even blow it out with compressed air and it would probably be fine. So there you have it. The Bubblebee Sidekick low-profile IEMs get 2 big thumbs up from me here at SoundSpeeds. And on the screen right now is the SKU numbers and the item numbers for everything Sidekick related, from the left and right ears along with stereo to the filters and different size ear tips. So take note of that and feel free to use this video for reference in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning into this episode of SoundSpeeds. Be sure to tune in the future for more product tests, unfortunate destruction, and sound advice. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.